So the next bit here are mainly about Viserys, what kind of king he was, and how Rhaenyra, his darling princess, and his brother Damon, somewhat of a dashing rogue, going around and having adventures. And you were saying how this, like the second half of this chapter, is all the Rogue Prince.
Yeah, yeah. So the second half was written, years before the first half, and so you'll see a tonal shift. Yeah, this is all the Rogue Prince that might be getting folded into the new show. If
Well, I hope so because there's a lot here, and just like with the whole Jaehaerys bit and Good Queen Alysanne, there's so many new Targaryens being
Mhm.
born left and right, and all this like scandal happening. I loved it, and I gotta say, there's a lot of testimonies of like what happened, a lot of conflicting
Yeah.
reports. Hopefully, if the show decides to like do every single thing we've just read, they go with Mushroom's testimony of what happened because
Yeah.
his version of events are more like, yo,
Yeah, yeah, they probably will. It is really confusing for people the first time reading it because it's been years, so I've read Rogue Prince a few times, but you know, it's a lot of events, but then you also have the events from different perspectives, and then there's perhaps the true perspective that you have to puzzle out of what really happened, but it's a lot. And for someone who's reading it, it just seems like random events. Like, well, then Damon Targaryen wanted a divorce from his wife, and then Damon Targaryen, got this mistress from Lyse, and then Damon Targaryen, and all these little things. Each of them I could talk forever about, actually, but
well, before we
uh,
continue on, I have to ask you because I'm actually not that familiar with the Rogue Prince story.
mm.
This is not like a big book. Is this is a? I looked it up. It said it's a novella.
Right. So years ago, there was a short story compilation called Rogues. There was a previous one called Dangerous Women, in which the Princess and the Queen, which was released in, which we're going to get into next when we get to Dance of the Dragons. So he released one in a collection called Rogues, called The Rogue Prince, which deals with the lead up to the dance.
Mm.
So, it's been out in the ether for a while. It's funny because at the time they're like, oh, these were cut down, but then when they actually, like, when Fire and Blood came out, they didn't seem to be cut down that much. So I don't know what was the story, but nonetheless, here it is.
The Rogue Prince, I'm not too familiar with. Like Duncan Egg, yeah. A
Yeah,
few other minor stories here and there, sure. But you're like, this is a whole. Hold on, I want to see what this
yeah,
looks like. The Rogues, Song of Ice and Fire collection, right?
yeah, yeah. It's a bunch of short stories, and the Rogue Prince is just one of them. Um,
I see it here.
yeah, it's collective authors. This was the George R. R. Martin was trying to throw a bone to his friends, and so they'll do a collection, and then he'll throw something in that he knows that, like, Ice and Fire fans are going to buy the book for that, and then everybody else, like, gets their stories sold as well along with him. Yeah.
Okay. Because you're always like buying these random like. Didn't you recently buy the Daenerys a short story that came in a magazine?
Oh, yeah, 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 from years ago.
Yeah.
But that was back when, he was a nobody. This he released, at the height of his popularity, and so he
Now he has powers to like he has
right.
selling power.
It's
Yeah.
it's like how his blog is constantly about, peddling wild cards and his friends' stuff. He likes to try to share the wealth with his buddies. So the Rogue Prince, I mean, I can summarize it, if more or less, because it starts getting confusing. But for the most part, because Viserys doesn't really do that much as ruler, they kind of shift the focus to Daemon and Rhaenyra. And so if we kind of remember that Rhaenys, the queen who never was shafted, and then they'd have the Council of 101, and her son is shafted, and the kingship is given to Viserys. And so Viserys is going along, and he doesn't have any male heirs. And his wife is an Arryn, and she is sickly, and she eventually dies, and Rhaenyra is the only one. Their daughter is the only one that survives. And so the Council of 101 had established that the male, no matter what, when it comes to kingship, that all women are out until all of the males are exhausted. But the
Hmm.
problem is that everyone seems to hate Daemon Targaryen, the Rogue Prince, Viserys' brother. It's not really explained why he's that bad. Um,
He's just a troublemaker, from what I gather here.
right.
And there is somewhat of a reason that we're given in the book. Essentially, when Viserys's wife dies during childbirth, their infant their infant son along with her, Daemon Targaryen makes a joke about it at a brothel, and the king hears about it. And this is one of the deciding factors for him to declare his daughter Rhaenyra the official heir to the Iron
Right,
Throne.
which sounds like a big bullshit story. Like, how is he hearing about hearsay at a brothel?
Supposedly, they also go into details of this as well. Supposedly, one of either Damon's Lyseni mistress tells the king, or one of the gold cloaks with Damon
But
tells him to advance his
but
station.
there's also a causation problem because his comment was heir for a day, meaning Daemon is supposedly angry at the baby for taking his kingship, but it was already established that Rhaenyra would be heir if Viserys didn't have a son. I mean, the drunken jape story just sounds like a bunch of bull to me. They never really explain why Daemon is so bad, and whatever the case is, after he gets declared not heir, he decides to cause trouble and goes and starts making war in the Stepstones because the free cities and Dorne are going to war a bunch with Volantis, and the Stepstones are this prize that they keep fighting over. So Daemon Targaryen goes down there and decides that he's gonna become king of the Stepstones, which
To
kind
which
of
he eventually just like lets it go. Like he doesn't care about it
yeah,
anymore. He gets
it's
bored of it.
somewhat there's a somewhat mirror to the pirate. There's a pirate king that appears at the end of A Dance with Dragons that also is declaring himself the king of the Stepstones. There, it's a callback, but whatever the case, he does that for a while, and he gets this mistress, the White Worm, from Weiss, and he tries to give her a dragon egg.
But that
Um,
pisses off his brother, the king.
right.
To which he orders him to send her away. And when she's going off to Lys, her child dies from miscarriage on the way there, and that pisses off
Right.
Damon.
And so all of these things, though, you start looking at Damon's actions, and you start looking at, say, the Maester, the Hightower Septon's Maester Old Town conspiracy, and you say, okay, when it comes to succession, it's very clear that they didn't want Rhaenys, the Queen Who Never Was, line. And so Laenor is shafted, and Laena is his sister. Rhaenyra is chosen temporarily over Daemon Targaryen, but later on we know that the Hightowers come in and Viserys marries again to the Hightower girl,
Alicent.
Alicent, and they have Aegon the Second, and then the succession is switched from Rhaenyra to Aegon, and but if you can kind of see that they're against certain parties having it, but strangely, all the shafted parties start kind of getting together. Daemon marries Laena, and Daemon is trying to fool around with Rhaenyra, and eventually marries Rhaenyra. But so you know, it's funny that Daemon is going for this, is trying to have children with the exact people that the Old Town forces are trying not to have be the rulers, which I think is kind of interesting. That I think that in my opinion, Daemon knew something was up, that these lineages were important, and that he wanted to make a child with them. I think that's why he was trying to have a dragon hatcher with the White Worm, try to produce a dragon, or at least he's trying to get close to people that have dragons because maybe he thinks war is coming. So because Rhaenyra's a dragon rider, Laena's a dragon rider, her brother Laenor is a dragon rider. Rhaenyra's children all end up becoming dragon riders. And when the dance does start, like the big thing that Rhaenys, the queen that never was, says is, "We've got a hell of a lot more dragons than they do, and that's all that's important." And it's true, that is all that's important. Is
Well, I can still. You want me to continue the summary for this
oh yeah,
chapter?
yeah, please.
Even after marrying Alicent Hightower and having new male heirs, Viserys still does not change his decision on having Rhaenyra inheriting the throne, going as far as replacing Odo Hightower as Hand. Around this time, Daemon Targaryen is just going around having all these kinds of adventures on the Stepstones, like you said, joining forces with Colerys Valerion and taking the Stepstones from the Three Sisters Alliance of the Free Cities. Because of Viserys' refusal to name any male heirs, tension grows between his wife and his daughter, and during a tournament, both women would wear lavish gowns that would later reflect their signs in the coming Dance of Dragons, where Alicent wore a green gown, Rhaenyra wore a black and red one as the Targaryen colors. It would soon become commonplace to refer to each side's party as the Greens or the Blacks.
Yeah.
In the same tourney, Daemon would return from playing war and swear fealty to his king brother, but this wouldn't last. Supposedly, there are conflicting reports of why Daemon was sent away again. Either he seduced his niece, Rhaenyra, or seduced her, but in a dirtier way? Because
Mm.
apparently, like, the story was that um, he seduced her first, and then the other story was that he didn't really seduce her. He just taught her sexual things so she would learn them and try to seduce Christian Cole.
Yeah.
So regardless, he still seduced her. But anyways, despite all this, Laenor Valerion is chosen as Rhaenyra's husband, while Daemon marries Laenor's sister, Laena.
And of course, Laenor's gay, so like, you know, the dragon population has boomed with the birth of Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra is the most powerful woman ever, unless you count like now Daenerys. But Rhaenyra's special. Rhaenyra's super super special. She's born, dragon population booms, and all of a sudden no one wants her to be having any children. So they force her to marry a gay guy. And of course, like, she's got her own plans. And so, she does have kids, but it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing how when you read it with the from Rhaenyra's perspective, like it does seem like everybody's against her. It's hard to believe that there's not a conspiracy against Rhaenyra, considering how badly they treated her.
Well,
Um,
the funny thing is like reading this whole thing, there's a lot of extra fluff that's not really necessary, but in a sense, in hindsight, I guess this all is necessary for the TV show because Rhaenyra's whole situation, she at first she's infatuated with her uncle Daemon, and
mm.
then Christian Cole's her lover, kinda. We don't really know. And then we see that Harwin Strong
But
is
if
her
you remember,
lover.
Christian Cole's whole thing is for him to he wants Rhaenyra to run away with him to the free cities.
According to one of the testimonies. Another
Right.
testimony from
But that's
Mushroom is
it's
that,
but it's another way to just get Rhaenyra out of there, right?
hmm, sure.
I mean, that's the thing, is like every move that they make is like to try to stop Rhaenyra. Like, Christian married her to a gay guy, give her a romantic interest that wants to run away from her and leave Westeros. Like everything they do is just like, like it's just to stop Rhaenyra from birthing special kids, you know?
You could also argue that her story is not too unique, kinda. I mean, you kinda get the same thing with Dreamfire Reina, where she
Yeah,
married a gay guy and she's always shafted on the succession line, all that.
absolutely.
Right, so this could also be George just somewhat repeating himself.
Right, and they specifically say, "Oh, Daemon Targaryen's going to be another Maegor the Cruel," and you're like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" Like, in the sense that he wants to marry special dragon riding, dragon hatching women, um, you know, yeah, it's maybe.
Well, also at this time, there is a tension between Alicent and Rhaenyra that reaches an all-time high when their children fight, and in the process, Aemon Targaryen loses an eye. King
Hmm.
Viserys steps in and tries to put a stop to this feud once and for all. He sends Harwin Strong, the rumored father of Rhaenyra's children, back to Harrenhal, where he and his father die in a fire. Some suspect Daemon for this, trying to kill off Rhaenyra's lover. Others believe that the king himself ordered it for fear that Harwin would reveal that he is the father. The one thing I really enjoy here about Harwin Strong and
Hmm.
Rhaenyra is that despite the fact that her children clearly are his, they're still dragon
Right. I mean,
riders.
they're either his or Kristen Cole's, but like, I mean, they're clearly not Laenor's, right?
Clearly,
You
yes.
know, like,
But
uh,
yeah. So despite that, the chapter comes to a close somewhat, where Daemon's wife Lena dies during childbirth, and he and Rhaenyra marry in secret on Dragonstone, which pisses everyone off. And even so, Viserys tries to keep the peace between everyone until his death in 129 AC. A few notes from the chapter. Alicent's father, Odo Hightower, disliked Daemon Targaryen and had him
hmm,
removed from a small council. Christian Cole in this chapter is inducted into the King's Guard and is notable that he has defeated Daemon Targaryen in combat before. Court Jester Mushroom, the little person, is regarded as a feeble-minded, but this was somewhat of a ruse, as he later has his experience at court documented in detail.
yeah.
King's Landing's city watch becomes known as the Goat Cloaks when Daemon Targaryen took over it.
This
Uh,
is actually one thing. By going back to Mushroom,
hmm.
everybody thinks Moon Boy is an idiot, but then a lot of people like question, oh, is Moon Boy smarter than we think? Moon Boy is just one of those characters that's always been in the background of the entire story, and we're not sure if like there's more to Moon Boy or not, but he's just there.
I would like a testimony of Moon Boy, like when everything's said and done. I would like a
Yeah,
testimony of Moon Boy to see what really happened.
yeah, exactly.
Johanna Swan is sold off to a pleasure house in Lease, but soon became its ruler in all but name as time went on. This just I took note of this because this I feel as though George had another random story he wanted to really write in there, but luckily for us, he decided not to put it in because you know how he is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely some weirdness with how Swan, when we come to the Dance of the Dragons, and I do wonder, what her purpose is with that story. Um, there's just some issues on which side the Swans are on, but which gets brought up in a Dance with Dragons with Tyrion. One interesting thing that did you finish the summary? Because there's one interesting thing I wanted to mention way back at the beginning, actually.
I just took just minor notes. Adorn joins the Free City Alliance in their war
Hmm.
against Daemon on the Stepstones. There are conflicting reports of Rhaenyra's lovers and how it went about. Mushroom
Yeah.
reports Christian Cole rejected her despite Rhaenyra's charms, and instead she slept with Harwin Strong that night. Another claims that Christian Cole wanted to marry her in Essos away from the throne's reach. According to Mushroom, Daemon Targaryen supposedly paid one of Laenor Valerian's companions to stab Laenor and then killed that man later on to make Rhaenyra a widow so he could marry her. And Alicent's son Aegon is known as Aegon the Elder, while Rhaenyra's son Aegon is known as the Younger.
Yeah. The or Aegon the Second and Aegon the Third. The so if we rewind, so I am of course like super conspiracy oriented on this time.
What? Really?
Yes, QAnon all the way on this on this. But so if you remember way back when Jaehaerys died, okay. Now I think all of this is focused around the High Towers. The High Towers are pulling the strings here. The High Towers have all the control in Old Town. The Council of 101 was Archmaester Vagon's idea. Everything is getting pushed into motion through the High Towers. They bring Alicent over because they know that they want to cram Alicent down Viserys' throat. They know that the Council 101 is going to lead to Viserys being king. He's a widow at this point, I think. Yeah, so they want Alicent to start seduce in there to try to marry Viserys. Alicent is first there under the pretext of taking care of old King Jaehaerys, and she supposedly, Jaehaerys dies with her reading him Unnatural History by Septon Barth. Now, it's very interesting kind of thing. Now, the implication is that, oh, Jaehaerys wanted to hear the words of that book.
Mm.
But we know from the Ariana chapters in A Feast for Crows that Unnatural Histories is boring. It's a horrible book. Okay. So no one's going to be comforted by the reading of that book. It's uh, just really straightforward, like sciency, boring crap. Um, so I wonder if Alicent was the one reading that book, that she wanted to read the book, not that Jaehaerys wanted to hear the book. Alicent wanted to read the book. And that's the funny thing, is because we hear that and we're like, oh, it must have been Jaehaerys' choice to listen to that book. No, well, he's dying. He doesn't have much control over anything. Alicent is the one who has power over what book is going to be read. And so I'm saying that she wanted to read that book and learn more about dragons because House Hightower wants to learn about dragons because this is their whole conspiracy. How to birth them, how to kill them, all of that.
So the end game here between the High Towers, the Faith, and by some part the Maesters is that they would have the High Towers at the seat of power and keep them there over the Targaryens.
Yes. I mean, we aren't really sure what exactly the prophecies that people are reading in Old Town are. We know that the High Tower, the current High Tower, is obsessed with prophecy and has been reading them. But we don't know if the High Tower has been doing this for generations. What we kind of know is that, after the dance, the dragons mysteriously die. And we also know is that Marwyn believes that that the Maesters did it. And we also know that there is a suspicion from Lady Dustin that the Maesters caused the Southern Ambition plan to eject the Targaryens. So that it wasn't just getting rid of dragons, it was getting rid of Targaryens. So this is, and so when we go all the way, back into this, who controls the Maesters? If the Maesters have this plan, well, the High Towers are the ones that really control the Maesters. And so the High Towers are just getting, and the High Towers are the key players at this like pivotal moment right before all the dragons die. So so that's why I'm so conspiracy oriented on this.
What can I say? I mean, you make some convincing arguments.
I've convinced one person at least.
I'm sure you've convinced thousands, Preston. But this chapter, interesting. It gives us a sad end to Jaehaerys and an interesting beginning into the dance. There's a lot here to pull from. And once again, this is what they're going to make the television show about. And I wonder if they're going to start at the very beginning here. I wonder if we're going to have the season start half at where Viserys dies, and then the end of season 1 is where the dance begins.
I think it's most interesting to read through it and ignore all the salacious stuff, and just view it as like, well, wait a minute, why politically is this person, aligning themselves? Or why did they really leave? Why would Viserys be so angry at his brother over that? What's the real reason? One thing I never figured out was Damon's interaction with the Stepstones and Dorne and the Three Sisters, or any of that. George always makes these always makes these comments in the books about how none of the characters understand the wars between Myr, Lyson, and Tyrosh. And I don't either. Like, I've looked at them and I'm just like, I always thought that maybe there's some sort of secret shifts in who supports Daenerys, and that they're totally in on that plot. But it's confusing. Like it doesn't really make sense. When you listen to when you list them out, they start with I think Tyrosh and Tyrosh and Mir are going to war with Lyce, and then all of a sudden Lyce and Mir are going to war with, or Lyce and Tyrosh are going to war with Mir. And no one understands, how this switch happened. Who knows? But yeah, why these, the three sisters wanted to attack Volantis and then take on the Stepstones, and it's not really explained. Just that somehow Daemon Targaryen and Corlys Velaryon got in the middle of it for some reason.
The book states that they mainly took it over for the taxes.
The
Every ship
taxes.
that has to go there. It's
Hmm.
a bustling, location where ships go through all the time. Every time Corlys Velaryon went on his 9 voyages, he essentially had to come back through that way a lot of the times. So the taxes were ridiculous, and that's one of the reasons he went to war in the Stepstones.
Sure, but I'd rather have taxes than pirates.
As for Daemon Targaryen, it just seems like the character has this fire in him that he just can't sit still. He
Mm.
has to be out there fighting, doing something, walking about, getting fucked up, and
Yeah, I mean
and doing stuff.
it's presented in the same way of Oberyn's
Yes.
adventures, like that Oberyn had nothing to do with himself. He was exiled, so he decided to go to war, by joining sellsword companies in the free cities. It's presented that way, just to freaking kill time. Um,
Isn't that what we said of we did a video last time where you did not like the casting for Daemon Targaryen, and I think we
mm,
both agreed that Daemon Targaryen is essentially as good looking as Jaime, but with Oberyn's
yeah,
passion and fire, right?
absolutely.
And you didn't like the casting for Daemon Targaryen.
Right. I just don't. Sorry, Matt Smith.
Matt Smith, I was gonna look it up. Yeah.
He's been sending me death threats constantly.
Oh,
He's
has
like,
he?
you better shut up, or I'm gonna go back in time and make it so you never were born.
And
Yeah.
Viserys himself was not really a bad king, but he just didn't want to deal with the bullshit. He didn't want to deal with his brother's crap. And at one
He
point,
seems very much a pushover to the the Old Town powers,
well,
Um,
he's more about laying low and just relaxing and doing things his own way. I think this is one of the kings that have the most feasts and tourneys and balls. Like every other page, there's like a new tourney.
he's supposed to be like Robert, right? Like he's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to
In a
be,
sense.
he's supposed to be this horrible, this king that let everybody else rule in his stead. The whole Robert thing is like, well, really, John Aaron is running the show, and not Robert. Robert and Littlefinger is secretly stealing all this money, and Varys is doing all this secret stuff behind the scenes, and Robert did nothing but care about when the next tourney is. That's how they're trying to portray the series. Everything that George writes is some sort of like mirror of something that happens in the main story.
Yeah. But overall, the chapter was all right. It was a nice start to how it did a nice job laying out what's going to go on in the Dance of Dragons. And the next chapter, I don't know how many pages that'll be, but I'm sure.
It's a lot of setup. I will say that it's a lot of setup for the dance,
Hmm.
which is funny considering that they were released in the other order. It was the dance first and then the Rogue Prince. Um, and so that, it establishes all of these like tensions that are then all exploded. But it's kind of released backwards, really. Yeah.
Well, we're a little halfway over finished with the book. we we are. I believe this is what page 392, 391, 393, around there, and the book itself has 721. A lot of those pages you can just brush off as like just random filler. But we're a little over the halfway point, and it's taking us. Fuck, when was this book released? 2019? 20? No, 2018?
Late 2018, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's our fault because we just there
Well,
other shit that
we
pops
got
up
distracted, but now
by
we're
Raised
now
by
we're
Wolves and Mando and
yeah.
Picard and
Well, we'll see how the dance goes. Maybe it'll go fast.
no, it won't. We both know it won't go fast.
I mean,
God, I
we'll
just hope
see.
he doesn't like give us some like random like he loves to talk about like women and their promis
Well,
like
there's a lot of these little things in there, like, no, I mean, the same with the Rogue Prince here. I could take any of these issues and talk about them for a long time, but it's the same with the dance. Like there's some little things like here and there, like who was Blood and Cheese and things like that. Like these random little stories that come out of nowhere that you can talk about forever.
Some of them are
But
interesting. Like
yeah.
once again, I always call back to like the sex worker during Jaehaerys' youth, which was ridiculous. But some of them are interesting, like Lisa Farman's journey west of Westeros. Like that was cool. I like that. And
Because
once
he was just writing stream of consciousness. Like I say, he needed to put out a book, and so he's like, I've got,
he put out a
this
book, he
whole.
could put out Winds of Winter.
But he hasn't written Winds of Winter. He had written most of Fire and Blood. I mean, he had, like I say, if you're saying the Dance of the Dragons is the second half, well, he had that. He had Rogue Prince. He had Sons of the Dragon. He had the intros with Aegon. He just had to like fill in Jaehaerys, which he had a bunch of stream of consciousness like tangents about Alyssa Farman and stuff like that. Like, and then he's just like, call it a day. Boom, book. That's what happened. No. All right. Well, we'll get into the dance next time.
Oh, Jesus Christ. How many pages is that? How many do you think?
It's split up. It's split up. So we'll take it slowly.
We'll take it. We always take it slowly. But guys, Preston, can we wrap it up?
Yeah, sounds good.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Fire and Blood. Join us next time. Oh, by the way, before we end this, real quick,
Mm.
um, because Preston won't do it, I'll do it for him. Please subscribe and ring the bell notification because I say this because you released recently a video, Daenerys and the Page of Lies.
Yeah.
I did not get notified for that.
Mm.
And I also noted that you forgot to post it on Twitter.
Oh, really?
You at first you forgot to post it on Twitter.
And then I did later.
Then you did later. So usually Twitter, usually Twitter notifies me a lot of the times. Sometimes YouTube does it well, but sometimes YouTube likes to do this thing where it bugs out and it doesn't notify me that you uploaded a video. So guys, please subscribe to Preston and ring that notification bell and follow him on Twitter at SweetRobin9000 so you can get up to date with all the new videos that come out. And once again, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Later.